There is a carnivore food that I used to include in my diet for every single meal back in 2019 when I started carnivore. But after 5.5 years on a carnivore diet, I've completely eliminated that food from my diet and only eat it when my body tells me to. Welcome to Apex. My name's Jacob, and in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what that food is, why over-consuming it can be potentially problematic and lead to negative health outcomes, what to do instead, and the importance of trusting your gut, listening to your body, and eating intuitively. And the carnivore food I'm referring to is liver. So liver is something that when I came to carnivore, I naturally gravitated towards. I don't know why, but I started buying chicken liver. And I was eating a lot of chicken liver. I mean, with every single meal. And then after chicken liver, I naturally gravitated towards beef liver, and I consumed quite a bit of that. And then I started harvesting the liver from the deer I got, and I started consuming deer liver. And for the first year I was carnivore, and maybe even the first 2 years, I consumed a lot of liver. I know for a fact that the first year I was carnivore, I had liver with pretty much every single meal. And that actually began a little bit before I started carnivore, because before carnivore I was keto. And when I was on keto, I was also consuming chicken liver. It's something that brought me a lot of joy to consume, so I added it to pretty much every single meal. And then, like I mentioned, I carried that on through my carnivore journey. Now, knowing what I know now and looking back on that, I will pretty much say that the reason I consumed all that liver is because my body was lacking very fundamental nutrients that I needed to get in my diet. Because when I came to carnivore, I was very, very deficient. My digestion was a complete nightmare, and I was really having a hard time digesting food in general. And at that time, I was also chronically wasting away. I'd went from a 230-pound bodybuilder down to a 145-pound skinny kid, which I had not been since like high school and college. And in 6 months' time, I basically lost like a third of my body weight, which was mostly muscle, and that is not a good scenario. So that alone tells me that I was very deficient in a lot of vitamins and minerals, and my lab work also reflected that and backed that up. So I think that's where liver came in. It played a very important role in getting those nutrients back up in my system. And I remember when I really wanted liver, I would walk through the grocery store and I would just like naturally gravitate towards where the liver was, and I would pick it up and throw it in my cart, not even thinking about it, just because it sounded so good. And after I started to really heal and, reverse my chronic conditions and stuff like that, I lost that magnetic pull to liver. When I would walk by it, it just didn't sound good. It wasn't even a thought in my mind to go over there and buy it. So I stopped consuming it. So what I'm describing here is a basic definition of intuitive eating. I was eating intuitively. I was going with whatever sounded good. I was trusting my body, trusting my natural intuitions, and that's what I was consuming. But after consuming content, watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, doing some general research, I kind of realized that I wasn't consuming liver anymore, because I heard all these people online talking about the benefits of consuming liver, talking about how you need to consume it when you're eating a carnivore diet. And that tipped me off to the fact that I just wasn't consuming liver anymore. So I started to question what I was doing, and I started to add it back into my diet, even though I didn't desire it. And there's a couple things that happened from that. The first thing that happened is that I would eat it and it didn't really taste good, because when I started including liver in my diet, it tasted fantastic and I couldn't get enough of it. But this time when I was including it, it really didn't taste good. And when I ignored that and I continued to include it in my diet, it started to actually repulse me. And when I would cook it, I couldn't even stand the smell of it. So that right there was a very clear indicator that whatever it is that's in liver, I was maxed out on, and I did not need any more of it. So at that point, I started to trust my gut again. But I would go through cycles, and I would include it, I would cut it out, I would include it, I would cut it out, and I would repeat that process until I basically determined that I just need to trust my gut, go with my intuition, and eat it only when it sounds good to me. Because through that cyclical process, there were actually a couple very important things that I learned. And these are things that might help others in the carnivore community, because this is something I see very, very frequently. So the first thing I learned is not to blindly trust everything that everybody says in the carnivore community. Now, I'm not discounting the amazing benefits that eating liver can have on your overall health, but there is such a thing as too much of a good thing, and including that in your diet too often, from my experience, can lead to problems. And I experienced some of those problems firsthand from doing what I was doing. So the first thing I experienced was general aversions to meat and aversions to organs. Like I mentioned before, the sight and smell of liver absolutely repulsed me, and those food aversions turned me off from wanting to consume food at all. And the second thing that happened, and this is kind of a weird one, this is something I've experienced several times since trying to incorporate liver in my diet when I know I didn't need it, is that I would get this sensation of feeling like you're not getting a deep enough breath, if that makes sense. So like you breathe in And even though you're getting air in your lungs, it doesn't feel like you got any air in your lungs. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's a really weird phenomenon and a really weird feeling, but that's about the best way I can describe it. And I've had that numerous times when I get maxed out on liver and the nutrients that come along with liver. The third thing, and this is something I realized actually somewhat recently that I never connected the dots on, is that eating too much liver would also give me heart palpitations. And once I realized this, I started looking into it and I started kind of researching why liver would give me heart palpitations. And through my research, not only did I kind of find out the answer, but I also found out that there were a bunch of people on carnivore that claimed that they had heart palpitations and they had things like muscle cramps and lethargy and other symptoms that is related to consuming too much liver. So based on the research I've done, the reason I think this stuff happens is because when you consume liver, it's not really a matter of vitamin A toxicity. I don't think that's really too much of a concern unless you're consuming tons and tons and tons of liver, or if you're consuming something like polar bear liver, or your body is just predisposed to not being able to properly excrete the vitamins and minerals that your body doesn't need. So I don't think it's that. What I think it is I think it's a form of heavy metal toxicity, and specifically copper. And from what I've read and from what I've researched, too much copper in the body can absolutely cause muscle cramps, it can cause heart palpitations, and it can cause a lot of the symptoms that people experience on carnivore when they claim it doesn't make them feel very well. And that's exactly the stuff I would experience when I didn't listen to my gut and didn't trust my intuition, and I would overconsume liver. So I think this is very important because there's certain people in the space, like Paul Saladino, for example. He's somebody that moved away from a carnivore diet because of those exact reasons. He said that it gave him heart palpitations and he had muscle cramps and many of the symptoms I just mentioned, and he was eating organs and promoting to eat organs every single meal. And I think he would say something like 2 or 3 ounces a day, which in my experience, once you're maxed out on these vitamins and minerals, that is way too much. The way I consume liver now is, like I said, intuitively, but that usually boils down to like maybe once every week or two, or sometimes even once or twice a month. So it's much more spaced out than it was before because, like I said before, I was eating it every single meal, but I also did not have those symptoms when I was eating it every single meal. So I think that's very telling. And I think that ties into exactly what I'm talking about. And something else that ties into this is that too much copper in the body can actually lead to iron overload as well, because copper is responsible for your body's ability to hold on to and maintain iron in the body. And that's something else I've seen a few people in the space mention that they had. One person, for example, is a guy by the name of Frank Tufano. He's somebody that I started following way back in the day when I first started carnivore. He was kind of one of the OGs of the carnivore community. And then after, I think 8 or 9 years, he went back to eating a varied diet. And a lot of the reason for that is because he said he got iron overload. But he's also someone who is promoting eating liver all the time. So it kind of makes you wonder if this played a role in his issues. Because at this point, and being as in tune with my body as I am, that if I was to ignore my gut and just blindly consume liver for every single meal, I would not be able to sustain this lifestyle. I would have fallen off the carnivore diet and I would have went back to eating other foods, because the symptoms I experience when I eat too much liver, it does not make me feel good. It turns me off from wanting to eat food, and it gives me all those bad symptoms I just mentioned. So if you're following a carnivore diet and you're experiencing these symptoms, think about what you're consuming. And if you are somebody who's consuming organ meats for every single meal, or you're consuming liver every single day, consider scaling that back or cutting it out for a period of time and see how you respond. One of the best things we can do for ourselves is listen to what our body is telling us, because our body knows exactly what it needs. And if you ignore those signals, if you ignore your intuition, it will lead you astray. So for my research, there is one other thing that could limit your body's ability to detox excess copper from the body, and that is Wilson's disease. And Wilson's disease does exactly that. It basically limits and restricts your body's ability to detox copper from the body. So you'll experience all these same symptoms I just mentioned. And that makes total sense because liver is very high in copper and it's very high in iron. So if you're consuming that every single day, it's kind of easy to see how that could be problematic over the long term. So if you found this beneficial and you got some value out of this, comment the word liver below so we can get this out to more people. And also let me know what your experience with liver has been. Is liver something you include in your diet? And if so, have you experienced any negative side effects from doing that? And if you haven't done so already, be sure to like, subscribe, join the Apex Tribe, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace out.